My family's Alzheimer's journey came to an end in July, but that is when our grief began. We all deal with grief in our own way, and sometimes it's good to confront it as a group. A few weeks ago, one of my two sisters, my brother and I, were joined by some friends and an advanced practice nurse counselor for a grief counseling session at my house. It lasted about an hour, and tonight we wanted to share some of the highlights. Food, wine, and laughter. It's what we like to share at my house. But the people in this room share another bond, Alzheimer's. Each of us watched a mother live with it and die from it. Maureen is my older sister, a retired teacher. Jack, my brother, is a counselor himself. Camille, my best friend, is a retired educator. Her sister Pam is a retired teacher. Pam's best friend, Jonna, is a retired minister. Counselor Jean Clement is going to talk us all through our shared experience of having a loved one with Alzheimer's.
Which is probably one of the things to experience, because it's experiencing loss over and over and over again, and yet your loved one is still there.
Home. That I would think of an excuse to call one of my siblings, right, because they were the only ones that got it. Yeah.
And you want someone to say, it's normal to feel that way.
Yeah.
There were times we left seeing our mom going, I want this over with.
They're not talking, and then I would feel like this mix of, oh God, I'm out of there. And then I'd feel guilt for that. And then I would feel guilt because Maureen and Jack were there like every day, and I would drive away from it, and it was almost like I had survivor's guilt.
You see them die daily, and when they're living with you every day, a death, a loss.
We ended up in the ER somehow, and this young doctor came out and said, are you going to sign this resuscitation thing where, where they won't do anything? Yes. And at that point, I knew she was having problems, but I didn't, she was still talking and walking around and still was mom.
We weren't at that part.
And it kind of, and I said, well, I want her resuscitated. And he said, well, a lot of times at this point in their life, you might as well just, let them go. And it got me really agitated. And I said, no, I want her. And then I think for at least 2 years after that. Some of the grandkids were born.
Yeah.
And she did get to see them.
And she enjoyed them. She enjoyed them. The last time that we brought Mom to my house for the Christmas party, do you remember that? It was awful. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know us.
We would spring her from the nursing home and bring her to Camille's and try to have a normal Christmas day. And I remember Dad taking her in. I opted not to go in. And he brings out her coat. And it was still warm from her body heat. And I just remember clutching it, thinking that this warm coat was the best part of my mother on Christmas. Just a warm coat.
There's that sense of loss again. The grief is ongoing.
Every Christmas was so hard, knowing that we were all there together and celebrating. And she's like 5 miles away, totally unaware that it is Christmas, would not recognize. We would all go in to visit her. She didn't know it was Christmas. So in some ways, it's like a relief that this Christmas, I feel like she's celebrating again. I feel like I have to believe that she's with Dad.
Talking about grieving while she's still around is, I'd be home doing something or would be out somewhere or some event, and all of a sudden it would hit me, Mom's still sitting right now in there, and it bothered me more than anything. And every once in a while that thought would just come, and oh my, it was like a kick in the gut.
I think it's so unnatural that she didn't get to meet one of my children. That just doesn't seem right.
Yeah. And it isn't. It isn't.
But but that's what makes that grieving process for me really hard. It's a lot of work to grieve.
We tried assisted living first, and that didn't work out. But even with that, every time you had to make a decision like that, taking her driver's license away, it's hard, you know, and you question if you're doing the right thing.
It will hit you out of the blue when you least expect it.
Yes. Yep.
A song, a knick-knack, something that you find in the attic when you weren't even looking for that thing. It is like somebody smacks you in the face and says, deal with this memory. Yeah. And it suddenly is as fresh as if she had died yesterday.
It's intense, it's difficult, but it's natural.
You know, my mom was so religious and so faithful and so convinced that God was on her shoulder. And I always wondered how you, as a minister, reconciled yourself, because don't you find yourself questioning, how could this happen to this woman who had this level of faith?
She would say, Johnny, why haven't I gone home yet? Why haven't I gone home to be with the Lord? And then I would say, well, Mom, that's the hardest thing to trust God for, is when we die. That's one of the very hardest things. And then I go outside and shut her door, and I go, really? She did. It was like, come on. Will you please take the woman home? She deserves that.
They used to have a mass where my mother was, and so we'd take her sometimes. And the priest came walking in past her in the aisle there, and she said, what are you doing here? She said, you're going to ruin this wedding.
It was the last family reunion she went to, and she goes, Johnny, who are all these people? They're fat and they're ugly.
They had these nice benches, and you could put like little memorial things, like in memory of John Smith or whatever. And we stopped into this gazebo, and we were all sitting around, and she said, you know, those benches are so nice, but you shouldn't have to die to get one. Lost Dad. Alzheimer's and cancer.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome cancer.
I agree with you.
I mean, not that I want it,
absolutely
but
agree.
I don't want to put my kids through a 10-year death.
Camille and I have talked about this. Do I want to know? There are tests out there that can show if you're going to have a propensity. Who would want to know that?
I do.
Why do you want to
Why?
know?
Because, for one thing, I'm an only child, and I have no children. So there's no one to protect, but there's no one to fall back on either.
I don't want my kids. No. If I get it, okay. I really won't kind of know in time, but I don't want my sons
To be experiencing that with you.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I feel like I did my grieving when she was alive, but going through the Alzheimer's.
And the memories can be joyful
Yeah.
and just, engaging, and then they bring hurt.
On Mother's Day, I cried for my mom the first time since she died. The other Mother's Days were sad memories of how she had been. And this Mother's Day, I remembered her as she was when she was 40. And I cried. I grieved that mom.
We've been living with Alzheimer's Betty for 10 years. But the people who came to her funeral remembered funny Betty and happy Betty and dancing Betty. And so it was really weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, you got so used to seeing her in this declining state, and it lasted so long that it got to be normal.
I have people that I can connect with, and you know that I've been through this and you've been through this. We can cry together.
We can.
And I don't feel sheepish about that
We
at
need
all.
to do that.
Let the tears flow. When they come, they'll come.
Having family and friends that you can share these experiences with, is something that enriches you and enriches them at the same time.
My thanks to the Alzheimer's Association and to all of the volunteers who were here with us tonight, answering the phones and being online with all of you. A big thank you to the executive producer of this show, Jen Kaiser, who has been with this program from the very beginning. Photographer and editor Andy Banks did all of this work for the program. We thank him, our director, Jason Litton, our crew, Zeke Riley, Evan Huddle, and Corey Barrett, and all of the people who shared their stories with us tonight. We started this program because my family was searching for answers. We thought your family might need help too, and we hope you got the answers you were looking for. We encourage you to reach out for support and guidance if you are on the journey through Alzheimer's.
Let me go home, and I'm surrounded by a million people. I still feel alone, and I wanna go home. Oh, I miss you, you know. Let me go home. I've had my run, baby, I'm done. I'm coming back home. Let me go home. It'll all be alright. I'll be home tonight. I'm coming back.